Hello, I'm Steph from iDriver Classic, and if you've been watching for a little while now, you'll know that last year we went and visited a Riley 1.5 and I fell in love with it. I thought it was gorgeous, brilliant, wonderful, and I recommended them to everybody. But here's the thing, is ever since I've spoken to people and they've been like, a Riley 1. What? And lots of people are very familiar with the Wolseley 1500, but not a lot of people are familiar with the Riley 1.5. And in today's video, I wanted to revisit one of my favourite cars from last year, but in a slightly different guise, because this example has never been restored. It's completely original, bar a couple of details like the carpets and a couple of bits and pieces under the bonnet. But by and large, this is how it rolled out the factory, and this has been in work for a few weeks and I have totally fallen in love with it. And I really want to document some of these rarer, more special cars, especially the ones that haven't been dolled up within an inch of their lives. And I wanted to show you this today because it's a survivor, it's a rare car, less than 20,000 of these were made, and I want to build up that love and appreciation for the Riley 1.5s and of course the Wolseley 1500s alongside, because these are such special cars and they deserve so much more attention and praise than they get. So with no further delay, let me introduce you to the Riley 1.5.
A brand name not used for decades, unless the person you're talking to has a family connection or a car in the family, or perhaps an interest in classic motorsport, they'll probably struggle to think of what a Riley is, or what Riley sold, or where the brand sat within the automotive market when the sales were high. Now, as addressed in videos before, many Riley fans see Rileys as sitting in two boxes. And this is a really controversial thing to talk about, but we're going to talk about it anyway, because there's a lot of people you meet through Riley circles, not all of them, but quite a lot, that seem to think that Riley sits within two camps. So you've got Riley as the standalone brand, and then the cars that are made after the brand went bankrupt and was bought out by Nuffield Organisation, which of course then becomes part of British Motor Corporation. Now, one of the biggest gripes from many people who draw that line in the sand is that aspect of badge engineering. Now, we've spoken at length about badge engineering in videos covering things like the ADO16s, but for newbies to the channel that maybe don't know what that means, the idea of badge engineering is you take the same basic model and then you tweak it to suit the taste of the customer buying into a particular brand. You still see it today with various cars across different marks, and they try and then tweak it to fit what that customer wants, but essentially the bare bones of it are pretty much the same. Now, firstly, it's useful to note where BMC saw the car in the market, which was largely influenced by the brand's heritage and how the loyal customer base and who they saw as potential new customers perceived the brand. And the brand was then positioned between MG, so MG was above it, and Wolseley, which was just below it. And with many designs coming from the Austin and Morris teams, because they were kicking out some amazing stuff, some Riley folk just felt like the brand had lost its way because it wasn't really the same team that were doing the stuff. And in fact, this is a car which actually came from a problem of aging models within that Morris pocket. So BMC needed a car which was going to replace the Morris Minor. And so they come up with plans for this particular car, which then becomes the Wolseley 1500. Shortly after that, you then get the Riley 1.5, and that's where that car goes. It isn't necessarily a Riley design, so you can maybe kind of see what people are talking about. Now, as an aside, despite it being an aging model, the best year for the sale of the Morris Minor was actually 1958, where BMC shifted around 200,000 cars globally, including the CKD cars. Considering this, it's easy to see the context in which the team felt comfortable with keeping the Morris Minor going, so they don't immediately feel like there's a non-existent sales crisis. However, there is such thing as market competition and aging models and the crisis that brings with it, but that's a topic for another day. Now, coming back to this car, the Riley 1.5, whilst very similar to the Wolseley 1500, is certainly not the same. I mean, you've got all the interior bits. I personally think the seats are better quality. You've got that beautiful walnut dash that you'll see when we jump inside, but the car was marketed predominantly as a sporting saloon, and it was therefore kitted out with what was seen as an uprated engine in comparison to the Wolseley 1500. And it also has twin SUs and a close ratio box. Now, it's worth noting that the brand's brochure expands upon this and explains that the gear ratios are carefully planned so that the top gear does the work of an overdrive. Now, this is said to give quieter running, better economy, and less engine wear, which was a really important thing at the time because you didn't get the same mileage out of engines back then as you do now. And third gear was marketed as being perfectly suited for overtaking. It's also worth noting that while both cars are fitted with the B series engine, which you see in lots of other cars as well within the BMC range, the Riley offered nearly 20 horsepower extra over the Wolseley. Now, it's really no wonder we were seeing the main strapline in those later brochures saying high performance motoring in comfort, and later on they strap a little bit extra on, basically saying it's proven in the market. And it was said to be designed for the motorist who demanded more than just a mode of transport. And for many, in fact, around 20,000, it absolutely ticked those boxes. However, Steph, I hear you cry, how did that Wolseley do? Well, listen, the Wolseley ended up being far more popular and it sold over 100,000 units. Now, it'd be unfair to try and make out like it had dominant market share in the UK and that was why. But look, the Wolseley was much more of a global brand and those 100,000 units didn't just come from the home market because they were selling Wolseley into markets like America where Rileys weren't sold. So this naturally gave Wolseley the edge over Riley to take those sales without too much effort. As I mentioned in my last video, sales come to an end for these in the mid-60s and that's kind of the end of it really, which is such a shame because as I think you'll see in this video today, they are one heck of a car. Fantastic.
Coming inside this Riley 1.5 reminds me just how much I enjoyed it the very first time because the layout inside is absolutely elegant and I love this wooden finish, all the gauges, the dials. It just brings a sense of occasion to driving. And I was talking to you about that strapline on the front of the brochure when we were walking around talking about driving for driving's sake. It was really playing into that world of driving being for pleasure and not just being a means of getting from A to B. And I think that's really lost nowadays with your modern cars, is everybody just thinks about getting from A to B, what MPG you're getting, and it's just so cold and so boring. This is still that era of elegant driving, although it must have been really strange for Riley drivers because if you think about the cars that had come before, things like the Riley RME, they'd been so quintessentially Riley. Something like this, I wonder what Riley customers would have felt. In fact, for those of you that did buy into things like the Riley RME and then bought into something like this, how did it feel? Because you went from that world of everything being very Riley to then stepping into a car that essentially had BMC underpinnings. It wasn't that out and out Riley experience anymore, although the brochure wouldn't have had you believe that. Anyway, coming inside, let me show you what we've got, because with less than 20,000 of these ever made, you've probably never seen one in the flesh, well, in the metal anyway. Coming over from here, you've got this rather large glove box, and as you can see inside there, you have got so much room. And that's not the only thing, because if you've ever been in an early one of these, you'll note that the parcel shelf is quite shallow. It's different shape to this, it's slightly further set back, and you get less room to put all your stuff in. And when you get to the slightly later ones, they increase that space and you get more space. Over from there, you've got your heater control panel, so that's your air intake and your temperature. You've got your speaker, and I love this effect. It's like the old radiograms, isn't it? It's beautiful. You come down into the stereo. Now, I can't show you the original bill of sale because it's got so much detail on it. It's got the original owner's address on it. It's got chassis numbers. It's got lots of identifying stuff that I don't think I should probably share. But one of the things it does note is that the radio was an extra that was paid for, along with those boomerang mirrors. So they're Desmo mirrors on the outside of there. They paid extra for the underseal and the seat belts, which were BMC. Goodness me, and there was something else. I can't remember, I'll put it on the overlay. But anyway, that was one of the extras paid for. However, if you look at the handbook, let me show you, in fact, when it shows you the layout of the dash, it doesn't actually show you it without the stereo. So I just showed you that at home there. So I guess it was a very popular one that probably pretty much everybody went for. In terms of your gauges in front of you, you've got three. So you've got your speedo, You've got split gauge in the middle, so you've got oil, temperature and fuel, and then you've got your rev counter. Now, in terms of how you're getting on with things, I think top speed on this is high 80s. Although I was talking to somebody after I did that Riley 1.5 video last year, and they said to me, they went, no, you can go up to 100 in those. I was like, what? I said, yeah, 100, you'll hit it just fine. So I guess before speed cameras, people were testing out these things and finding out what these cars were truly capable of. And apparently one of those things was 100 miles per hour. Coming down from there, you've got your choke, you've got your start, you've got your fog lights. Now, you're probably going to say to me, Steph, there are no fog lights, have they been removed? Not so. So if you look in that original handbook, it says this has been put in and it's connected, there's a wire that goes to the battery. However, it's then for the dealership to upsell those fog lights. They're not fitted as standard. So there's not anything that's been removed from the car. It's simply an optional extra that the first gentleman who bought the car hasn't chosen. Over from there, you've got your panel lights. Popping those on. You've got your side and heads. And then you've got your wipers just down here. Now, as I discussed recently in a video, makes me feel slightly sick when you hear a wiper screech across a dry screen. So all I'm going to tell you is it's single speed on that. And then the steering wheel probably feels oh so familiar because you've seen it in so many different cars. I'm most familiar with it in a Morris Minor, so it feels very at home for me. Now, the thing that I don't like about this dash, okay, and this is me being incredibly picky, is I think it's really weird where they've put the key. So the key is just here, and they've plonked it between two switches. So then the space between the choke and the starter and the fog and the panel lights isn't the same. I personally would have budged those up, put that across and put the key either there or there. But that's me being really picky. But quite often you ask me, what don't I like about these cars? That's just one that I don't like about this. Now what I'll do is, remember, it's got that 1.5 in that I was talking about. I've just remembered, I've forgotten to show you something. It's a period accessory. I am not going to pull it, but you are going to notice it, this chain here. And this chain is for the radiator blind. And I pulled it by mistake the other day, and it takes forever to wind back in. So we're not going to touch that today, but it's just so you know what that is. So I've switched that on. Check we're in neutral, and I'll get her started up for you. Might help if I remembered that there was a starter on this side. Give it a wee bit of choke. I don't know if you can hear that at home, or probably should say you can't hear that at home, but it's really quiet in here. They've got this so right. Have a listen from the back, and then we're going to go out for a drive, and whilst we're out on the drive I'm going to tell you a couple of other little interior details and exterior that I absolutely love on this car. Right, let's go on an adventure. I tell you what, isn't half sprightly getting up into fourth gear there, which of course is our top gear because we do only have 4 forward gears. No synchromesh on first, and the synchro on second is a bit of a tricky mistress. So when you watch me drive today, you might see me be very hesitant as I change down into second gear, just because it needs that extra TLC just to keep it all together. Now as we cruise along, you'll notice it is so quiet, and that is one of the lovely things about taking out cars this era, is that cars in this period of time are still incredibly well made, because people were still buying cars that they wanted to keep for life. And in fact, my car, one of my Morris Minors that I owned, was bought in 1960 by the original owner, and she kept that for life. I mean, by the end of her life, it looked absolutely dreadful. However, she did keep it for her entire life. And lots of people did hang on to cars for so much longer than they do now. So that quality and that build was just so very important. And you do feel it come across in this car. And I should probably say as well, is that something that I particularly like about this car, and I think you might as well, if you're a bit of a traditionalist and a purist, is that the seats haven't been recovered, and they are as Riley intended, and they are exactly as they always were. So it's the original leather, it's slightly weathered, and the car is on nearly 75,000 miles, and I think they look very well to say that, you know, they've done that many miles. But what is the driving experience like? Well, we're in a slightly nice position here because the steering rack's just been greased, it's had a service, the brakes have been adjusted, so everything's at its optimum, which I guess is kind of good really, because it gives you a much truer feel for driving the car than perhaps something that's been round the block and had nothing done. Now, in terms of driving this, see if I can show you going through the gears. It's a nice, short, sharp shift, which actually was talked about within the brochure. It was that idea that it wasn't just a saloon, it was a sporting saloon. And if you ever look at the front cover for one of these brochures, and unfortunately I don't think I can show you it because of copyright, which is really annoying, but when you look at the front, it shows a pair of men's driving gloves, and it just talks about that sporting prowess and driving being for fun and pleasure. So they weren't going to put in something where you were labouring through the gears. And if you think about it, there would have been a lot of people changing up into something like this from a 30s or a 40s car where the gear change was quite laboured. They might have been double declutching through the entire box. And so to get something like this, where it's offering such a much more refined driving experience, it really is pleasure indeed. So that's the way you have to look at it. You can't compare it to something of modern day, because no, compared to modern day it is a bit more effort, but compared to something back then, not like that at all. Now, another thing to mention is the space and roominess in this car, because it is so much roomier, I think, than you might think when you first look at the car. You might look at it and you think, yeah, it's a saloon, but it's, you know, a 50s saloon, it's going to be a little bit cramped inside, and it's not at all. So as you can see, I've got loads of room around me in the front, and loads of glass as well, which I do love, because in this, it has got such smashing visibility. I've just got straight into the car, felt immediately at home, and is all just felt so easy to get to grips with. And as well as that is all the space around me. So I've got loads of space in the front, which is great for me and whoever's sitting in the front with me. But as well as that, in the back, there's, I would say, an acceptable amount of room for passengers in the back as well. Maybe not loads, but when they were designing cars like this, they weren't thinking about the typical family taking 4 adults out. They were thinking mum and dad in the front, kids in the back. And so looking at how much legroom I've got there, so you can see there, I've got a few inches in front of my knees. It's acceptable is what I would say, and you don't feel too cramped. But because the seats are so well upholstered and they're so comfortable, that little bit of legroom that you're losing, you don't miss that too much. I think the only thing that could improve it for me in the back is maybe some armrests, one of those pull-out centerpieces that you can rest your arms on. Those are the only things for me that I think would maybe improve that experience in the back. Although, have you seen how many ashtrays we've got? We've got an ashtray in each of the fronts of the doors here, and what I really like is that the design, the Bakelite of the ashtray matches the Bakelite which is on the door pulls. Again, it's those little details which for me make it an exceptional finish and a beautiful car. Now, the one thing I will say is if you are watching this from Australia, you may never have seen one of these in the metal, because I don't know if I mentioned it in the last 1.5 video, but these were never sold over there. You all got Wolseley 1500s. However, in North America, they did sell them. So these were sent over, not in their droves because they weren't a big seller, they were just sent over sparingly and filtered into dealerships. However, there are still a few that exist over there. Now, if you're watching this video and you're saying, Steph, you've sold it to me, I love it, you know, I've got the legroom, that B series engine you can still get parts for, you're not having to sweat like you are with some of the more obscure engines, and yeah, fair enough, the body panels might be a little harder to get, there might be other bits that are harder to get, but I want to own one. I've seen one online and I'm going to buy one. What support is out there? Well, this is the thing, there is a fantastic club support for these across many different levels. Actually, you can speak to the Wolseley Club, they're really friendly and they'll help you out as well. You've got the Riley Club, and I've talked about the Riley Club before, they are some of the friendliest people you will ever meet, and they mix, so you've got the pre-war Riley people, you've got the post-war Riley people, and they all come together, and the support is absolutely marvellous for you to keep your cars on the road. You've got places like where I work, ADO Spares, where we can get bits and pieces in for you, no sweat at all. So keeping one of these on the road really isn't the tricky endeavour that it is for some of the people with 90s cars. I mean, trying to keep some of these 90s bits and pieces on the road, even British stuff, is harder than trying to keep something like this on the road. So please don't be put off just because of the age of the vehicle and think that going for something newer will give you an insurance that you'll be able to get the parts, because actually the support for one of these is sometimes better than stuff that's half its age, which to me is absolutely wild, but it's how the chips have fallen. Now, it's time for me to take this one back. I'm trying to think what else I can advise you on. I guess the other thing that I would say is that, again, this week I've been seeing loads of stuff online about drum brakes, and people saying, no, you can't drive on drum brakes in modern traffic. I'm here again to tell you, if you buy a car with drum brakes, if they are properly adjusted and you build your driving style to accommodate the drum brakes, so leaving a slightly larger stopping distance than you would leave in your modern car, looking slightly further down the road, drum brakes are not the absolute devil that people make them out to be. I've driven on drum brakes now for, gosh, best part of 20 years, and I'm fine. And I've driven on motorways, I've driven abroad, I've driven in central London, I've driven through all the major cities in the UK on drum brakes, and I've been fine, because as long as they're adjusted up properly, as long as you keep your eye on it, and you are just looking slightly further down the road, leaving that slightly larger stopping distance, you're absolutely fine. So if you're looking at one of these and thinking, no, it's those drum brakes that are putting me off, don't let that be the case, and don't feel like you've got to swap over to discs and chuck loads of money after it. You might find you want to do that in the long run, but it's certainly not something that you have to do, it's a choice. Now I'm going to pop this round the roundabout, take her on home, but it has been a pleasure to show you her today. I really hope you've enjoyed revisiting the Riley 1.5. I know that I've enjoyed it, but I want your thoughts. Do you think these are a forgotten treasure? Do you think 50s and 60s cars are just a little bit too dull for you? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And if, like me, your favourite era is the 50s and 60s, let me know what your favourite classic is. And until next time, when we meet again doing something else, take care and drive safely.